Hey guys, welcome back to Fossil Linux Journal. Michael here. The developers of Elementary OS around Danielle 4 have announced the availability of Elementary OS 7 alias Horus. With this comes some urgent modernization like the Ubuntu 22.04 LTS substructure. What Elementary OS 7 has to offer now, that's what this video is about. Stay tuned. Elementary OS is based on Ubuntu LTS and comes with a rich portfolio of its own solutions in the form of its own Linux distro. Not only does it deliver its own desktop Pantheon, which is a GNOME fork, but also several of its own apps, including their own developer platform. Pantheon Desktop is perceived by many as an adaptation of Mac OS, and I had also positioned myself that way in the past. Certain elements are reminiscent of Mac OS and OS X that can't be denied. Elementary OS 7 comes with the following new features: Ubuntu 22.04 LTS substructure, Linux kernel 5.15 LTS, GTK4 in a customized design, Granite app framework, fresh app icons, and web app support. Even though the new features doesn't seem that revolutionary at first glance, there is a lot of work involved as Pantheon requires a lot of attention, which is also reflected by the significant delay in this release. The developers also stated that for OS 7 they focus on the following: providing the necessary apps, new features and settings, further development of our developer platform. Sounds a bit mystical or spongy, but we are still looking at what you can actually imagine by that. Don't worry. Let's come to the technical key points. Elementary OS does not make any special statement about the minimum requirements. Thus we orient ourselves at the minimum requirements of Ubuntu 22.04 as reference. That means concretely 2 GHz dual-core processor or newer, 4 GB RAM memory or more, 25 GB disk space or more. Internet access is helpful, either a DVD drive or a USB port for the installation media. The distribution model is classic LTS distro thanks to the Ubuntu LTS substructure, means static release. Only 64-bit architecture is supported and you can manage the Debian packages with apt. The Elementary App Store is also included and supports, unfortunately, only Flatpak. What is the target group? The main target group of Elementary OS should be former users of OS X or Mac OS. So, if your Mac does not receive Mac OS updates from Apple, in that case, you don't have to work with a Mac that doesn't get security updates anymore, but you can switch to Linux like Elementary OS. Then, thanks to the Ubuntu 22.04 substructure, there are security updates until 2027. My system needed 7.8 GB from the disk. The initial benchmark value in memory requirements was 1.1 GB. The number of installed packages is 1,659 Debian packages and 11 Flatpak apps. Here I have to mention that I had to install the kernel headers, GCC, make and Perl to install the VirtualBox guest extension, as well as another 34 packages for the simplified display of the installed packages via NeoFetch. Subtracting that, there are initial 1,598 Debian packages pre-installed. At the time of posting, Pantheon was shipping in version 1.518. The most annoying fact in my eyes is the arrangement of icons in the window area. Let me show you. So where in Windows you have minimize, maximize and close on the top right, as well in Mac OS these are arranged on the left side, Elementary OS continue its own track. Close is on the left and maximize on the right. Minimize is not offered. It may not be so dramatic for everyone, but it still bothers me. If you feel like the same way, you should install the Pantheon Tweaks tool. Those of you who are currently using Elementary OS 6.1 will now ask themselves, where are the optical innovations? Maybe you have already seen that there are some new icons. Code, the in-house text editor, may have already caught your eye. The file browser also has a new icon, as does the calendar, etc. The in-house apps have new icons, we can note that. Here we are already done with the significant visual change. Wow, that was quick, wasn't it? Most of the work went into the substructure. As a GNOME fork, they don't deny themselves the new GNOME design guidelines. So it follows modern standards and toolkits. GTK4 brings a lot of performance and rendering improvements, as well as features that make it easier to make apps responsive and animated. Pantheon is pushing the boundaries of the toolkit and will keep up with point releases of GTK4 as a part of the Flatpak platform. Several apps and desktop components have already been ported to GTK4, such as calculators, sideload, shortcuts, music, and onboarding, and several more GTK4 ports will follow during the OS 7 lifecycle. The latest version of the Granite app framework and system style sheets have been updated to support GTK4 and have a host of new features and API changes to make building apps fast and easy. At least Horus brings a new background image. That was not a polemic. With OS 7 there is at least a new beautiful image included. Let's check the pre-installed software. We have Linux kernel 5.15, browser is Firefox and GNOME Web, email client is Elementary Mail, Office package is not pre-installed, software container is Flatpak. In terms of pre-installed software, there is no skimping. The pre-selection is good, although I personally would have pre-installed LibreOffice. The quality of the elementary OS apps is generally okay, although there have been some weaknesses in the past. The following in-house apps are included: music, web, mail, photos, videos, calendar, files, terminal, code, and camera. These apps cover an essential basic need for the desktop user, although I still wonder why no contact app is offered. The music app has been completely refreshed and is now just a rudimentary playback player without offering, for example, album management and like this. The browser web is a GTK4 port of GNOME Web with fresh WebKit engine. The web apps, on the other hand, are limited to web, that means GNOME Web, and do not work with other browsers, for example Firefox. The mail app has been reworked but still does not offer essential features like creating folders or mail signatures. Speaking of mail, to add a mail account you have to specify the complete data like IMAP and SMTP server yourself. So if you use, for example, Google Mail or Outlook or my favorite providers like Mailbox or Posteo, you have to set it up yourself. GNOME, KDE or Thunderbird offer a wizard-driven setup. Not so with Elementary OS. You can forget about the mail app as an office mail client, at most as a client for a private mail account maybe, but not more. If you miss more apps, you may find them on the App Center, which is the name of the App Store. There is a dedicated Flatpak package source from Elementary OS. However, FlatHub is still not included. So if you are looking for an app, for example Spotify, you will be pointed to the sideload option. As the name suggests, this is the installation of apps from a third-party source like FlatHub. If you install an app from FlatHub via sideload, then FlatHub will be added as a source. You can also check it here. Go to Terminal, Flatpak Remotes, and you see App Center, Free Desktop and App Center. Now, if we go on and install Spotify client as FlatHub sideload app, afterwards FlatHub will be added as a remote source for Flatpak. So let's click here and then install. It's now fetching details. So we mark I understand and install anyway. So we're done, we click close. And let's check Spotify is installed. Here it is. And now we're checking the sources again. And as you can see, FlatHub is now added. From now on, you have the chance to search more apps than it was previously possible. Now you can find more apps in your search. Let's check Signal Messenger. Here it is. However, FlatHub is not pre-configured by default. The App Store also shows a bad picture when dealing with Debian packages because it simply does not handle them. If you search for VLC, for example, there is a result, but it is a Flatpak app. If we would have done this before the sideload of Spotify and without adding FlatHub as repository, there would also be the search lead to the information regarding to sideloading the app. So it would be the same procedure as I have shown you with Spotify. The package should at least be found in the Ubuntu package sources. The App Store will point you to sideload. Here, the homework from OS 6 and OS 6.1 was not done. So the app quantity without FlatHub is very low, and that in 2023. But while we are at it, if you install apps from FlatHub like LibreOffice, the app design does not follow the style sheet of Elementary OS. That means that the accent color is not correct and it may differs. The same is true for the dark mode. Only the curated apps from the elementary source take this into account if they are updated, but there the quantity is very low and there are no real hits among them. So I will show you this in LibreOffice in a few seconds. So click open. So we click on Writer, for example. Okay, now our color is blue. So now I'll make this window a little bit smaller and not lose the dock. So we go to System Settings, Desktop, Appearance, and then we will choose, for example, green. Now we have green accent color, and in LibreOffice you see it still is blue. Now we go into dark mode, and in LibreOffice it is still the light mode. Now you can say, it just needs to restart. I don't think so, but we'll check it. LibreOffice Writer, and you see it's still a light mode. In the App Center you can set automatic updates, which I would generally recommend. If you prefer to work with Debian packages, I recommend Synaptic as a solution. Danielle 4 and the Elementary OS developers didn't tell us in the official announcement how they plan to allow existing users of OS 6.1 to update to OS 7. You remember the change from OS 5 to OS 6 was officially only possible via reinstallation. An online upgrade option was not offered. Of course, there was the possibility anyway by changing the release name and perform distribution upgrade. Nevertheless, I had the hope that one does not come at the point in 2023 again with reinstallation. In the announcement of OS 7, I found no hint, but in the OS 7 FAQ. There it actually says that a new installation with previous data backup and subsequent data recovery is recommended. Here you get it. If you're coming from an older version of Elementary OS, we recommend backing up your data and reinstalling. I ask myself, guys, what the heck is wrong with you? In which year do you live? I already felt it was cheeky to offer this already in 2021 with OS 6. That this is now the case again with OS 7 can only be politically described as a bad joke. However, I could think of numerous other formulations, but they would violate my standard of expression in my videos. Surely you understand what I'm getting at. Furthermore, I worry more and more whether there is something going wrong in the whole project. There has been a lot done under the hood in 1.5 years, but not so much on the surface except of a new icon set. This is substantially thin and won't pick up those who always want features and innovations. The installer doesn't offer an option to install with Btrfs and subvolumes. The App Store is limited by default to the elementary Flatpak repo. There is no upgrade wizard. Since the departure of co-founder Cassidy James Bleed, all development has slowed and no new momentum is coming. Wayland continues to be a fortune word here. To me, that is not a good sign. Elementary OS 7 does justice to be a major release in equal measure as well as not. On the one hand, the substructure is modernized considerably from Ubuntu 20.04 in OS 6 to 22.04. Likewise, the Granite and GTK4 adaptations in Pantheon clearly justifies a major release. But on the desktop layer, apart from a new app icon set and a new music app, there is very little that is neither new nor amazing. Maybe it's just me. The fact that it is once again not possible to upgrade is, in my eyes, a declaration of bankruptcy by the developers. This may sound harsh, but I don't know of any other Linux distro that officially recommends upgrading even by reinstalling. Where do we live? This can only be a bad joke, or if this is something like Hidden Camera, then they are welcome to resolve this now. But unfortunately, it is not. For you, as a user of Elementary OS 6.1, you have the following options. Stay with OS 6.1, upgrade to OS 7 by reinstalling, upgrade to OS 7 by adapting the package choices, switch to another distro. I used Elementary OS from version 5 to 6.1 as my main distro, but I changed my mind and gave Elementary OS the boot. It doesn't fit anymore. The innovations that the project once executed seems to have left the project with Cassidy James Bleed. Even if I am subjectively wrong about that, for me the project is no longer noticeable evolving. Whoever fails to upgrade his users either suffers from mental derangement or does not care about the concerns of casual users without extensive technical skills. At this point, I wonder what this has to do with an alternative to Windows or Mac OS. So, if you now tell a Windows or Mac OS user that when switching from Windows 10 to Windows 11, you must first back up all data, reinstall and then restore all data, you can assume that the person will most likely not switch to Windows 11. Adapted for Mac OS, the same would apply for Monterey and Ventura. But a niche distro Elementary OS sees it differently. After all, competitors like Pop, Ubuntu or Linux Mint does it much better and offer upgrade options. Okay, so if I were presented with this as a supposedly finished product, I would take note of this opinion and draw the necessary conclusions. This test is one of my few that doesn't come to a really positive conclusion. Now, this is not to badmouth Elementary OS, but is merely to point to a very weak OS 7 version. If they had done their homework from OS 6, my conclusion would have been different. But Elementary developers were slept through. Problems were not solved or suppressed. In any case, not a good picture. At the beginning of the video, I had mentioned the 3 somewhat mystical sounding points of the developers for OS 7. These were providing the necessary apps, new functions and settings, further development of our developer platform. New apps I can go along partly. They did some extent with a new music app, but there are better alternatives in the FOSS universe. New features and settings come partly from the Ubuntu substructure. Here I refer exemplarily to the energy plans. Further development of the developer platform is completely uninteresting for users, and that is exactly the problem. It is purely a version from a developer's perspective, which is completely contrary to that of a common user. It is nice that the style sheets have been optimized and GTK4 ports have been realized, but what effective benefit does this now have on the desktop in reality for the users compared to OS 6.1? It no longer goes in the direction of user friendliness. That came out clearly for me. If I hadn't already switched from elementary OS to Pop OS, now at the latest would be the time for me to take my hat off, pull up my chairs, and then move away from elementary OS. Before the comments now are flooded because you can upgrade after all, then I say yes and no. Of course, you can do it on your own responsibility. I've already done this in case of upgrading from OS 5 to OS 6, but the question is, why can't you do it with this distro when all other distros worth mentioning can do it? The whole thing is extremely unfortunate for me because the distro once started so promisingly. Dedicated developers who wanted to launch a modern macOS-inspired desktop with their own apps with an app store based on a pay-what-you-want principle. That was more than promising. Let's see how Elementary OS develops. How did you like the Elementary OS 7 version? Do you share my conclusion or do you come to a different conclusion? Just write your opinion in the comments and I'm already curious about your reports. If you like my video, now is a good time to subscribe to my channel for free. Then you will always get more and updated. Like I said, many distro tests come to a positive conclusion. But even only if I can justify it. In this case, a positive conclusion would not have been honest and I would not have been able to justify it. I am not talking about what should be, but what is. Therefore, it is nevertheless hard, but hardly. Existing fans of Elementary OS should not be offended and you are welcome to share your opinion in the comments. I was once a big fan of Elementary OS, but now I am really disappointing, as you can easily see. How do you plan to migrate from OS 6.1 to OS 7, or are you getting out too? I'm excited. I thank you for the kind attention. Have a good time and until the next video. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.